Namaskar, I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Welcome to Newsnight. After Cyclone Tauktae, another cyclonic storm, Yas, is approaching. This time it's eastern India. In the show today, we will try and understand the weather system of a cyclone and also take stock of preparations at place in Odisha and neighboring states. The worst phase of the second COVID wave may be behind us. The past 24 hours recorded less than 2 lakh cases. This is the lowest in the past 40 days. A closer look at this data. And those big stories and much more in the show up ahead. Let's roll the headlines first. Very severe cyclonic storm Yas likely to make landfall on Odisha-Bengal coast by Wednesday. Over 8,60,000 people evacuated in Bengal and Odisha. Heavy rains in West Bengal, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. Preparations underway in West Bengal to tackle Cyclone Yas. Chief Ministers of Odisha and West Bengal take stock of the situation. NDRF teams deployed across districts. Navy also provides aid. Battle against COVID pandemic continues. Daily new cases fall below 2 lakhs for the first time in 40 days. Active cases come down by over 1,33,000. Recovery rate at 89%. Positivity rate comes down to 9.54%. Railways continues to execute massive oxygen and medical equipment delivery operations to various states battling COVID-19 pandemic. Over 17,000 metric tons of oxygen delivered so far by 263 Oxygen Express trains. Amphotericin B distributed among other medications among states and union territories. India's indigenous Covaxin gets authorization in 13 countries for emergency use. Process underway in 60 more countries. World Health Organization likely to approve the vaccine by September. Vaccination drive continues in the country unabated. NHRC issues notice to governments of Delhi, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh before Wednesday's farmers' protest. Notice served for non-compliance or violation of COVID guidelines during farmers' protest sites. Seeks report on steps taken to check the spread of coronavirus at agitation sites. Delhi police did not allow farmers to cross the border. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to address the Vesak global celebrations virtually on Wednesday on the occasion of Buddha Purnima. Heads of Buddhist associations around the world to participate in the program. Good news on the economy front. India tracks highest ever FDI inflow of 81.72 billion US dollars during financial year 2020-21, an increase of 10% over the previous year. FDI equity inflow grows by 19% to 59.64 billion. And let's first talk about Cyclone Yas. The cyclone is intensifying into very severe cyclonic storm. IMD has forecast the cyclone likely to reach North Odisha and coastal West Bengal by 26th morning. The landfall is likely by Wednesday afternoon. Heavy rains and winds are witnessed across several districts of eastern states. Relief and rescue agencies are also fully prepared to deal with the impact. Navy is also on standby. Over 100 teams of the NDRF are deployed at various districts on the basis of their vulnerability. State administrations have also set up control rooms for a coordinated response to the approaching storm. Here's more. All preparations are in place to tackle the challenge of Cyclone Yas developing in the Bay of Bengal. Ahead of the landfall, strong winds and heavy rains are reported across various districts of Odisha. People are being evacuated to safer places. Arrangements are also complete in West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh. Cyclone Yas is expected to intensify into very severe cyclonic storm in the next few hours. IMD has forecast the cyclone will move towards north-northwest direction. It is expected to reach North Odisha and coastal West Bengal by 26th morning. The landfall is likely by Wednesday afternoon. The impact will be visible across several districts of Odisha.
We are expecting it will make landfall by tomorrow early, means from noon, between particularly the location is given, that is Paradip and Sagar Island, between particularly Chandbali and Dhamra, that is north of Dhamra and south of north of Chandbali and south of Dhamra.
Heavy rains and winds are reported in many districts of Odisha. While there are rains in Bhubaneswar, tidal waves are reported in the coastal areas. Strong winds and rains are witnessed in Chandipur. Administration is engaged in alerting the locals.
अभी फिलहाल कोई नहीं है, सब पूरा खाली हो गया, बोट के जितने स्टाफ है सब ऊपर में आ गए हैं और कुछ देर के बाद जो भी है एक दो को बचा हुआ है सब आ जाएंगे फतेहसर।
In Odisha, administration is evacuating people to safer areas. So far, over 3.5 lakh people have been evacuated. Cyclone centers have been set up in every district.
Evacuation drive को intensify करके चला रही है। 81,661 people जो vulnerable areas में रह रहे हैं उनको अभी तक evacuate कर दिया गया है और उनको cyclone shelters में पहुंचाया गया है।
Initially, now we are just focusing on the evacuation of the people from the low-lying areas. For the evacuation purpose, we have identified about 1,200 shelters, which will be used as evacuation centers. All these evacuation centers have been properly sanitized because of the prevailing COVID situation.
All fishermen have been advised to move to safer areas. Food packets have been prepared for distribution. Meanwhile, Odisha Police has launched Emergency Response Support System with the number 112. The toll-free number will work for all emergency services, including police, fire and health. Besides Odisha, the cyclone will impact Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, Jharkhand and Bihar. In Kolkata, Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee took stock of preparations at cyclone control rooms. In Andhra Pradesh, the irrigation minister of the state has directed officials to be on high alert. The Met Department had issued warnings of rains in Bengal, Jharkhand and Bihar due to the cyclonic storm. The weather in Digha, the coastal area of West Bengal, also changed. It is raining there along with strong winds. Fishermen have been advised not to venture into the sea.
वेरी सीवियर साइक्लोनिक स्टॉर्म बनने का बाद भी ये उत्तर पश्चिम दिशा में अग्रसर होगा और 26 अर्ली मॉर्निंग तक बंगाल और उड़ीसा का जो कोस्ट है इस कोस्ट के नजदीक पहुंच जाएगा।
Relief and rescue agencies are fully prepared in view of the cyclonic storm. NDRF teams have been deployed at many places in West Bengal and Odisha. NDRF teams are making preparations in Balasore, Odisha, and people are being evacuated to safer places. At the same time, the team is also evacuating people to safer places in East Midnapur of West Bengal. A total of 45 teams have been deployed in Bengal. A total of 109 teams deployed in 5 states and union territories so far, of which 52 teams have been deployed in Odisha itself.
साइक्लोन यास में लगभग 115 टीमें 5 राज्य एवं 1 केंद्र शासित प्रदेश अंडमान निकोबार में तैनात की गई हैं। सर्वाधिक 52 टीम उड़ीसा में तैनात की गई हैं एवं 45 टीमें पश्चिम बंगाल में तैनात की गई हैं।
Indian Navy is also ready to deal with the threat from Yas. INS Netaji Subhash is spearheading the Indian Navy's efforts in close coordination with the state government of West Bengal. 2 Navy diving teams and 5 flood relief teams have been deployed in the state. 1 diving and 2 flood relief teams each have been positioned at Digha and Fraserganj. 1 flood relief team has been kept on standby at Diamond Harbour. All preparations are in advanced stage to deal with Cyclone Yas, and Centre is keeping a close watch. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Home Minister have held separate meetings. The objective is to minimize the loss of life and property. With OP Yadav, Bureau Report, DD India. And that brings us to the issue in focus in the face of the impending challenge. India prepares for Cyclone Yas. That's the issue in focus. Two eminent guests are joining me in the program from two institutions that are playing key role in facing this challenge. We have with us Sunitha Devi, scientist and head Cyclone Warning Division of the IMD. And we are also hoping to be connected with Dr. S.N. Pradhan, DG NDRF, in a short while from now. Sunitha ma'am, if we can begin with you, if you could fill us in with the latest update on the trajectory that the storm, the cyclone, is following at the moment.
Cyclone Yas, it has further intensified into a very severe cyclonic storm. And now currently means 5:30 in the evening, it intensified into very severe cyclonic storm, and it is currently located around 160 kilometers east southeast of Paradip. The movement at present, it is in the northwestward direction, and we are expecting it to reach very close to coast. Dhamra port is it is likely to affect in terms of its intense gale force winds, as well as other factors like some storm surge and all features will be starting by early hours of this tonight itself. Because it is now 160 kilometers only far from Paradip, 250 kilometers it is southeast of Balasore located. So this is the current position, and the intensity in terms of wind speed, we are now estimating the wind speed to be 115 to 125 kilometer per hour. In gusts, the wind speed might be reaching around 140 kilometer per hour at present.
Right, and ma'am, if you could just reiterate, when we say it's a very severe cyclonic storm, in simple terms, how is that going to sort of materialize on the ground? What are the elements that we are likely to witness in such a system of cyclone?
A very severe cyclonic storm can cause major structural damages. In terms of per se, I can say that it can totally damage kacha houses. Some partial damage it can impart to pakka houses. Several communication lines, power grid, it can affect in the coastal belt. As such, it is coming closer to the coast. All this, in terms of the gale force winds, we will experience. And there will be debris flying, so people moving out will be dangerous for them. And as far as the sea condition is considered, sea will be very high and phenomenal in the sense that the wave height will be of the order of 7 to 14 meters high. So the sea, whatever operations, maritime operations, it will be highly dangerous at this period of time in the presence of a very severe cyclone storm. Right. And there can be, when it is approaching the coast, seawater will start accumulating along the coast, and as such, there is a phenomenon called storm surge, which is the most damaging part of the cyclonic storm. So this will be causing seawater inundation inland to several kilometers, even up to maybe 10 kilometers. Up to that, we can expect if the coastline is a low-lying area. So at present, we are expecting the system to move closer to Dhamra port by early morning, and landfall we are expecting around noon only by tomorrow. So that by that time, whatever astronomical tide, storm surge is, storm tide is there, above that water can accumulate, and there can be, we are expecting around Balasore, in that Bhadrak Balasore, there the maximum storm tide we are expecting of the order of 2 to 4 meters height.
Right, ma'am, on that a little more, we've just spoken about the extensive preparations that have taken place in various states in the east of India. Odisha in particular is seeing a lot of focus in terms of preparations. If you could give us a little more details about the regions that lie most vulnerable on the path of the cyclone.
There, the most vulnerable districts are Bhadrak, Balasore, and little to the south. So mainly we are expecting the wind speed to be of the order of gale wind speed of the order of 155 to 165. gustiness 185, that might be affecting major coastal areas or coastal belt only. It is once the system is crossing to means after crossing it might lose its intensity quite rapidly. But still a cyclonic storm intensity is expected. So in some districts, interior parts also, Mayurbhanj, Jajpur, all these districts are also likely to experience very stormy weather. Like gale force winds. For a certain period, it might be maintaining the intensity of a cyclonic storm for even after landfall. We are expecting maybe for a 12-hour period after landfall, a cyclonic storm intensity will be there. So interior districts of Odisha, adjoining districts of West Bengal, like East Medinipur, then Jhargram, even Kolkata also is likely to experience a lesser wind speed. So these are the regions which are expected to have major impact from the storm. Once it is entering and weakening, still there will be some strong winds prevailing for a certain period of time that will be further extended towards the interior districts of Odisha. Right. And then further over some parts of adjoining Jharkhand districts also are likely to experience this sort of winds. And at the same time, when winds are there strong, there will be heavy rainfall, very heavy and extremely heavy rainfall also expected. This might be inducing some flash floods situation. So we need to be prepared for wary of that also.
Right there. Also, Dr. S.N. Pradhan, DG NDRF, is joining us in the discussion now as we try and take stock of the situation in the face of Cyclone Yas. Good evening and welcome, Dr. Pradhan. If you could, sir, broadly take us through the preparations on the ground. We've shared some highlights, of course, with our viewers. If you could take us through the preparations as they're taking place in the states facing the challenge of Cyclone Yas.
Well, right now the process of evacuation has been focused upon, and a lot of evacuations in lakhs have taken place in both the states. NDRF is proactively helping in the process of evacuation, and that is principally critical now because there is a target of zero casualty, and the strategy is for zero casualty. And of course, after late night, the evacuation process will automatically have to close. And then the preparations will have to be to face the storm because it will probably happen sometime early in the morning. And then as it happens, there'll be a watch for any emergency requirements or any rescue operations required. And immediately in the aftermath of the storm will be the rescue operations and people stranded here and there, and the restoration of services like power, electric, telecom, and road services, then water supply, etc. So for all this, the NDRF has made the preparations, and 52 teams are in Odisha, and almost 40 odd teams are in West Bengal, and they are all primed for this entire long haul work before, during, and after the cyclone.
Right. Dr. Pradhan, could you give us some insight on the evacuation operations that are on? Because we understand these are no ordinary times with COVID pandemic and protocols for social distancing. Perhaps the challenge for the rescue and relief work becomes manyfold. So if you could give us an insight as to what kind of arrangements have been made for people who are being moved to safer locations.
Well, the states were advised by the central government also in the series of meetings to maintain the COVID protocol while evacuating. So the states were advised to also have extra accommodation, double the accommodation that normally required, because you have to keep social distancing, and that is trying to be implemented. Of course, it is a little tricky, and sometimes in practice it doesn't work because people tend to flock together in some rooms from one village or from one family. But that is the attempt across the board, and the local police, the local SDRF, the local civil defense, etc., home guards, etc., and of course the NDRF, which is very, very clear about its protocol, is trying to make them observe this. It is a tough call, but it is happening.
Right. Dr. Pradhan, we know that NDRF has always been on the forefront of a challenge such as posed by Cyclone Yas. Over the years, our processes have also become more streamlined. The recent cyclone that we faced, Cyclone Taukte, if you could share with us any key learnings and our takeaways that we have taken from Tauktae and the previous cyclones that we are able to apply to this one in order to minimize damage.
The Honorable Prime Minister said one thing during his review for the cyclone Yas is that the learning from cyclone Tauktae was that you should take all the warnings seriously, and this unfortunate event with the barge, if possible, could have been avoided had the warnings been taken with full seriousness. So that is the kind of instruction was that even if it is one catamaran with one fisherman out in the sea, he should also be closed and he should be brought back to the village to safety. So there should be no offshore activity is what the Prime Minister insisted upon, and I think that has been also insisted upon in the subsequent meetings by the Honorable Home Minister and the Cabinet Secretary. The states have been impressed upon this, that they should not allow anybody to venture out in the sea, and even the ships and the other boats should be brought in. So that probably has been done because of learning from the cyclone Tauktae. The other learning is that the cyclone Tauktae transformed into an extremely severe cyclonic storm just before landfall. Although at landfall it again downgraded into a very severe, but very severe itself is severe enough. And the 190 kilometer was the landing speed at some points in Gujarat coast. So that also gave a lesson that you should prepare for the worst case scenario, and you should expect that the wind speed will be high on the higher side, or the higher end of the prediction, which is there. So if the higher end of the prediction for Yas is 185, 180 kilometers per hour, that is what we should prepare for. That is a signal lesson from all the other cyclones that we have faced.
Right. Sunita ma'am, if I can come to you, again, sort of comparing cyclone Tauktae with the approaching cyclone Yas, in what ways is it different? And one is also curious to know if the frequency of cyclones and such weather systems have changed in the recent times, or is it normal around this time of the year?
This is the period in which Bay of Bengal will be hosting one or two cyclones, mainly one cyclone per month of May. Last year we had super cyclone Amphan, if you recall.
Yes.
Then prior to that there had been so the one cyclone is usual norm. Climatologically it is happening. Over the Arabian Sea, in fact, Arabian Sea is now hosting more and more. It is becoming more fertile field for cyclones. So that is Tauktae, when it formed over Arabian Sea, it became an extremely severe cyclonic storm and made landfall, as just told by Pradhan sir. But the thing is that this one is slightly one step lower than what was Tauktae. And here, both the cyclones, the issue is that we have a westerly wind burst sort of phenomenon happening because monsoon is also advancing at the same time. We have whatever winds to the south, we all are strengthened by the winds crossing equator and as a part of the monsoon flow. So the entire sea area is rough and already rough. Over that, this is happening. So already the wind is getting strengthened to the southern parts. So even over this cyclone, both the cyclones, one which we witnessed last week, Tauktae, and this cyclone Yas, both are having somewhat similar characteristics in terms of the wind speed, which is more to the south. And as such, there is when we are comparing with the Yas with Tauktae, what is happening, what we can see is that wind speed is like slightly lesser in this case. And the sea travel, which experienced also had been less. This formed as a depression on 23rd over East Central Bay of Bengal, and now within 4 days' time it is reaching coast. That is how it did not attain the intensity of an extremely severe cyclone storm, even though the sea conditions are all favorable. But so this is a major difference, I can say. And in terms of preparedness anyway, this is East Coast is more experienced, more and more cyclones are experienced along the East Coast and Odisha especially. So the preparedness is very well prepared. We are for this.
Dr. Pradhan, we understand that at a time like this, close coordination between different agencies providing relief and rescue initiatives is crucial. If you could give us a picture of how that is taking place in the states, in the regions that are vulnerable to the cyclone. We understand administration locally have put up different control centers. In what way are the agencies coordinating with one another to handle the situation?
Well, to start with, an agency like NDRF is in step with the local administration in both the states and other states also. And at the district level, they are at the disposal of the district administration. So there are teams sometimes made of the local police, the NDRF, the SDRF, the civil defense, the home guards, as well as the electricity department, the road department, the PWD. So it is a composite team that is made. So it's a symbolic of the team effort that is required in any disaster situation, and it cuts across the center and the state also. If you can recall that in the Prime Minister's meeting and the Home Minister's meeting, the Power Secretary, the Telecom Secretary, the Road Transport Secretary, including the Health Secretary, were all present because this is also a COVID situation. So everybody is coordinating with the state for oxygen supply while the cyclone is tackled, for medicines while the cyclone is tackled, for other important things that have to be handled, like power situation, so that the power to the hospitals is not cut. The telecom should be up running as quickly as possible. So everybody is coordinating, and there are nodal officers for every ministry vis-a-vis the state government also. So it is a Team India working together. So coordination is of the highest order, and that is as it should be, because in a disaster you don't draw lines, you don't draw boundaries.
Right. On that note, Dr. Pradhan, Sunita ma'am, thanks very much for joining us for this conversation, and good wishes to your respective teams as you help India tackle the challenge of Cyclone Yas. Thanks very much. And in a big relief, there is a significant fall in the daily COVID cases recorded in India. The vaccination drive, meanwhile, is also gaining momentum. India crossed a major landmark with more than 20 crore cumulative vaccine doses administered so far. More than 1.28 crore beneficiaries of age group 18 to 44 years of age have been vaccinated so far. Over 18.7 lakh vaccine doses were administered on Tuesday till 7 p.m. Now, this is the highest since the 1st of May, when this age group became eligible for the jabs. While the second wave subsides, Centre has dismissed misinformation that the third wave will be specifically dangerous for kids. Amidst these developments, inspiring stories of resistance are emerging from India's villages. Here's more.
India continues its fight against the coronavirus pandemic. For the first time, the daily new cases have fallen below the 2 lakh mark in 40 days. India registered 1.84 lakh cases on April 14th. 1,96,427 daily new cases were registered in the last 24 hours. Cumulatively, the active caseload has reduced to 25,86,782. A net decline of 1,33,934 was witnessed in the last 24 hours. It now comprises 9.60% of the country's total positive cases. 3,26,850 recoveries were registered in the last 24 hours. A total of 20,58,112 tests were conducted in the last 24 hours in the country, and cumulatively 33,25,94,176 tests have been conducted so far. The daily positivity rate has been reduced and now stands at 9.54%. The centre has dismissed that the third wave will be specifically dangerous for kids. Senior doctors are of the opinion that it is important to educate kids about the dangers and possible steps to protect themselves.
एजुकेशन होना चाहिए कि क्या क्या उनको ध्यान रखना चाहिए, मास्क रेगुलरली लगाना चाहिए, हैंड वॉशिंग रेगुलरली करनी चाहिए, और होपफुली ट्रायल शुरू हो गई है। भारत बायोटेक ने भी अपनी ट्रायल शुरू कर दी है वैक्सीन की, तो होपफुली इन द नेक्स्ट 3-4 मंथ भी बच्चों के लिए वैक्सीन भी शुरू हो जाएगा, तो हम जल्दी से जल्दी बच्चों को भी वैक्सीनेट कर पाए।
Union Health Minister Dr. Harshvardhan also continues to keep a tab on the COVID scenario and the fight against it in the country.
The world is now facing an existential crisis, the global threat of COVID-19 pandemic, which has led to over 3.46 million deaths across the world. And friends, my country in India too is facing the brunt of the second wave of the pandemic. the COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on the capacity of global health systems.
Oxygen Expresses continue to supply critical liquid medical oxygen to the states. Meanwhile, Union Minister for Chemicals and Fertilizers, D.V. Sadanand Gowda, announced that the additional 19,420 vials of amphotericin B have been allocated to states and UTs and central institutions on 24th of May 2021. Besides this, 23,680 vials of amphotericin B were allocated across the country on 21st of May. Amidst all this, news about citizens fighting the pandemic valiantly keeps on trickling from different parts of the nation. While the whole country is battling the second wave of COVID-19, a small village in Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra, Boyare Khurd, has used the tools of widespread public awareness following COVID-appropriate behavior, regular health checkups, and isolation of infected people to control the spread of the virus and eventually becoming COVID-19 free. Following the footsteps of Hiware Bazar, whose success story is already well documented, this small village with a population of 1,500 people has demonstrated that collective efforts of people have the power of reducing COVID-19 to zero and make an entire village corona-free. Bureau Report, DD India.
And meanwhile, various states continue to tackle the challenge of the pandemic. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath visited Varanasi, Mirzapur to take stock of the situation. In UP, vaccination drive for 18 to 44 years of age group will cover all districts from the month of June. Maharashtra has declared no home isolation in 18 districts that are recording high positivity rate. While lockdown continues in Bengaluru and Bhopal, Chandigarh is set to open all shops on weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Here's a roundup.
War against COVID-19 continues in all states of the country. Talking first about Uttar Pradesh. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath is working on a mission mode to defeat COVID-19. On Tuesday, he visited the Shivpur Primary Center in Varanasi and inspected the vaccination site. Thereafter, he visited Mirzapur to take stock of the situation. He inaugurated an oxygen generator plant for the district. Yogi Adityanath held a review meeting with officials of the district administration and also inspected the COVID command center there.
कुछ व्यवस्थाएं दी हैं, जैसे अभिभावक स्पेशल बूथ, उन सभी अभिभावकों को जिनके बच्चे 12 साल से छोटी उम्र के हैं, यानी थर्ड वेव की आसन्न आशंका को ध्यान में रख करके उन अभिभावकों को पहले से ही वैक्सीन का कवर दे देना।
The vaccination drive in the state will be expanded to cover all 75 districts from June 1st for those aged 18 to 44 years. 20,463 new cases of coronavirus were reported in the state in the last 24 hours, and the number of active cases is 2,16,057. A total of 163 people have lost their lives, and the recovery rate is 94.7%. In Maharashtra, black fungus disease or mucormycosis has been included in the category of notifiable diseases. As part of the Break the Chain campaign, the statewide lockdown also continues in the state. On Tuesday, the Bombay High Court directed the state government to take action against e-commerce companies for breaching the lockdown. The State Health Minister said that to keep the infection under control, it has been decided to ban home isolation in 18 districts of the state where positivity rates are high. Strict lockdown continues in Bangalore, Bhopal and Hyderabad. Restrictions are continuing in many big cities of the country to control the second wave of COVID-19. In Bengaluru, the capital of Karnataka, police were seen enforcing the restrictions. In Bhopal as well, roads wore a deserted look. But Telangana's capital, Hyderabad, saw huge crowds despite the lockdown. In Chandigarh, shops were allowed to open after 21 days from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. This decision was taken in the interest of traders and daily labourers since the rate of infection in the Union Territory has shown a decline. But night curfew will continue in the city from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. and the weekend curfew will also continue. Shops selling essential items will remain open till 5 p.m. on weekdays and till 2 p.m. on weekends. In Bihar too, lockdown is in full force till 1st of June. State Education Minister Vijay Chaudhary said that it is not possible to conduct the 12th examinations amidst a lockdown.
कोरोना संक्रमण का जो वर्तमान काल है, जब पूरे देश में एक तरह से लॉकडाउन लगा हुआ है, लोगों के आने जाने पर प्रतिबंध है, तो उस परिस्थिति में तत्काल आयोजित करना तो शायद संभव नहीं होगा, लेकिन कुछ दिनों बाद जिस तरीके से स्थितियां नियंत्रण में आती दिख रही है, महीने डेढ़ महीने बाद एक टेंटेटिव डेट जरूर घोषित कर देनी चाहिए.
War against COVID-19 continues in the northeastern state of Assam as well. A sanitation drive was conducted at the Guwahati Fancy Bazaar. At the same time, the pace of vaccination drive is continuing in all the states, including Jammu and Kashmir. In such a situation, people all across the country should remain vigilant, wear masks and maintain social distancing to defeat this second wave of COVID-19. With inputs from Shishir Shelar, Bureau Report, DD India.
And as India battles the challenge of the pandemic, we now see the signs of hope that are coming up, the manner in which India is on recovery path. We'll look at the data, we'll look at the broad pointers first, and then through the means of graph, I'll try and explain how things are changing for better. Now, daily new cases have fallen below 2 lakh mark after 40 days. Some 1,96,000 cases were recorded in the past 24 hours. And what happens to the active caseload? The active caseload has also now declined to 25,86,782. So broad pointers to show that the second wave in particular is going down. Overall, the positivity rate currently stands at 9.54%. Remember, positivity rate gives an indication of how many people are infected per 100 in numbers of the population. Also, the vaccination drive continues unabated. 20 crore vaccination doses have been administered so far across the country, and the drive continues to be on. What is particularly impactful is some 12.8 lakh vaccination for the age group of 18 to 44 years of age was given in the last 24 hours. Now, this is also the highest number. So, the 1st of May, when vaccination jabs opened for this age group, 18 to 44 years of age. So, those are some of the key highlights of the manner in which India can be seen to be on the recovery path. Now, let us look at some important graphs that present the data as to how this recovery is taking place. First, we are looking at decline in daily new cases. We mentioned less than 2 lakh reported in the last 24 hours, and the number stands here at 1,96,427. This is daily new cases of COVID-19. And at the same time, let's look at the peak as it existed sometime in the first week of May. This entire graph is charting the time period of about a month, from 25th of April to 25th of May. Sometime in the first week of May, we saw daily new cases peaking at 4,14,000 new cases every day. Let's move on to the next graph to see the manner in which this recovery is taking place for India. Now, there's also a continuous decrease, as we mentioned, in active cases, active COVID cases in the country in the last 14 days in particular. Now, this graph is a graph that is showing the COVID active cases for the entire year. We're looking at from 25th of April and we go through all the months of 2020, and we come to 25th of May. The first wave peak was around 18th of September. Some 10,17,700 cases were recorded at that time. The peak of the second wave, as I mentioned, was sometime in the month of first week of May, 10th of May, the time was, and 37,45,000 cases were recorded, active cases were recorded across the country total. Now, that number has significantly fallen now when we come to 25th of May to 25,86,782. So, there is a significant decrease in the active COVID cases as well. Let's move on to the next graph to see the manner in which recovery path of India is taking place. Now, there are two important lines that you can see at the moment. The blue line depicts the daily cases, and the green one is talking about the daily recovered cases. So, every day some people fall sick, turn positive, and some people also recover. But what is the manner in which these numbers are moving ahead? If we look at 25th of May, That is when we see the green line, which I mentioned is the graph depicting recovered cases, is going up, and about 3,26,850, because we're talking about daily cases, not overall. Daily recoveries happen at about 3,26,000, whereas daily new cases is at 1,96,427. It's fallen below 2 lakh. So a significant difference in the number of people who are recovering every day, which is quite high at 3,26,000, and number of people who are falling sick. So the latest data, 25th of May, 1,96,427 people fell sick. So this increasing margin between the recovery rate and the new cases also denotes the manner in which the recovery from COVID-19 as a pandemic is being charted in the country. Moving on to our next graph to understand the recovery path, the final one. Positivity rate is an indicator of the kind of impact that the pandemic is having. It gives you a percentage idea about how many people out of a percentage, out of 100, are affected by COVID in the country. Now we see from 25th of April, when the second wave started going forward, and when it peaked in the first part of May, to now 25th of May when it's going down, we see the manner in which the positivity rate first increased from over 19% on 25th of April to coming sometime during May, when the cases really peaked. The positivity rate was 22.61%, which is indicative of every 100 people, 22 people were turning positive. But now, when we come to 25th of May, when the lowest cases are being recorded, the number stands at 12.03%. So that's a significant decline in the positivity rate of COVID-19. So those were some key graphs which are indicative of hope, which are indicative of the manner in which the second wave is going down and the way in which India is charting the recovery path from the pandemic. We're heading for a short break. Lots more coming up in Newsnight. Stay with us.
With the world's largest COVID vaccination drive, India is leading the way. As the vaccine reaches every corner of the nation, do not forget the mantra, Dawai bhi, Kadai bhi. Let's continue our fight against COVID-19. Vaccination along with social distancing, sanitization and masks.
Mask up, India!
Put your mask on and cover your nose and be safe.
Mask up, India.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsnight. The Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has approved creation of one post of Director in Senior Administrative Grade at National Disaster Response Force Academy, Nagpur. With the creation of the post of Director NDRF Academy, the command and control of the organization will be entrusted to a senior and experienced officer who can steer the institution as per the intended objectives. The academy will impart skill-based practical training to over 5,000 personnel annually from NDRF, SDRF, NCD volunteers, other stakeholders and disaster response agencies of SAARC and also other countries. It will also cater to analyzing and improving the training programs as per changing needs and requirements of the stakeholders. And the Union Cabinet has also approved the opening of a new Consulate General of India in Ado City in Maldives this year. India and Maldives share ethnic, linguistic, cultural, religious and commercial links steeped in antiquity. Maldives occupies an important place in the neighborhood first policy and the SAGAR, that's security and growth for all in the region, vision of Government of India. Opening of a Consulate General in Ado City will help augment India's diplomatic presence in Maldives and make it commensurate with the existing and aspired level of engagement. The momentum and energy in the bilateral relationship has reached unprecedented levels under leadership of Prime Minister Modi and President Solih. This would have a direct impact in augmenting the domestic production and employment in line with a goal of a self-reliant India or Atmanirbhar Bharat. Some other news now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will deliver the keynote address on the occasion of virtual Vaisakh global celebrations on Buddha Purnima on 26th of May 2021. This would be in the morning. The event is being organized by Culture Ministry in collaboration with the International Buddhist Confederation and will witness participation of all the supreme heads of Buddhist Sanghas from around the world. Over 50 most prominent Buddhist religious leaders from around the world will address the congregation. Some news on the economy front. India has attracted highest ever total foreign direct investment (FDI) inflow of $81.72 billion during the last financial year. It is 10% higher as compared to 2019-20. FDI equity inflow also grew by 19% in the last financial year as compared to 2019-20. More details in this report.
During a year when the global economy was reeling from the disastrous impact of COVID-19 and its resultant lockdowns, the Indian economy managed to record the highest ever foreign direct investment inflows. According to data released by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, India attracted the highest ever FDI inflow of $81.72 billion during financial year 2020-21, 10% higher compared to last fiscal. Singapore remained the largest source of FDI for the third consecutive year with a 29% share, followed by the USA with a 23% share and Mauritius with a 9% share. Of the 10 top countries, Saudi Arabia is the top investor in terms of percentage increase in FDI. The computer software and hardware sector attracted the highest FDI inflows, followed by construction and infrastructure related activities and the services sector. Gujarat was the top FDI equity inflow recipient state with a 37% share, followed by Maharashtra with 27% and Karnataka 13%. Experts say that the FDI inflows show that foreign investors have reposed their faith in the Indian economy even during the pandemic. Various measures taken by the government related to FDI policy reforms, investment facilitation and ease of doing business have led to the increased FDI inflows into the country.
India achieved this FDI despite the pandemic. This shows that the ability of the Indian businesses and the regulatory ecosystem were to adjust to a digital working and remote workplace was very high. Indian businesses attuned themselves to the new normal very, very easily and rapidly, which is a good sign of being agile and being able to adjust to changing realities of the way the world is working.
Apart from a 10% increase in total FDI over the previous fiscal, the country has also seen an increase in foreign direct equity investment inflows, which rose 19% over the previous fiscal. Consequently, the country's foreign exchange reserves have also seen an increase due to the rising FDI and foreign portfolio investment inflows into the country. According to data released by the RBI, the country's foreign exchange reserves stood at over $590 billion in the week that ended May 14th.
FDI में $80 बिलियन से ज्यादा की इन्वेस्टमेंट हुई है पिछले साल, वह एक विदेशी निवेशकों का भारतीय इकोनॉमी में कॉन्फिडेंस दिखाता है। दूसरा, चाइना से जो एक शिफ्ट हो रही है ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन की, उसको भी दर्शाता है। और तीसरा, ये जो $80 बिलियन से ज्यादा का निवेश है, उसमें से काफी पैसा अपनी डिजिटल इकोनॉमी के लिए आया है, स्टार्टअप इकोनॉमी के लिए आया है। एंड ये डिजिटल इकोनॉमी, स्टार्टअप इकोनॉमी, यह भी विदेशी निवेशकों को आकर्षित कर रही है।
The Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, said on Tuesday that the healthy FDI flow into the country corroborates India's status as a preferred investment destination among global investors, and this will certainly assist in a swift bounce back of the economy from a pandemic-induced slowdown we saw in the last fiscal year. With Ajay Mishra, Bureau Report, DD India.
The National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, India has taken cognizance of a complaint that mass gatherings of protesting farmers flouting COVID-appropriate behavior are against the very rules, norms laid down by the central government and the advisory of the Commission itself as safeguards against the pandemic. Allegedly, the situation is likely to worsen day by day due to increased inflow of farmers at the site of protests. They are not only putting their lives at risk, but also posing a risk as the potential carriers of the virus to the others in rural areas. Accordingly, the Commission has issued notices to Chief Secretaries of NCT, Delhi, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh to submit action taken reports regarding the steps taken to control the spread of COVID-19 infection at the protest sites of the farmers. The report is to be submitted within 4 weeks. Let's now scan through some more news and updates in National Roundup.
Enforcement Directorate on Tuesday conducted raids at residences of Anil Deshmukh's associates in Nagpur. The raids were conducted in connection with alleged money laundering cases against the former Home Minister of Maharashtra. A case against Deshmukh was initiated by Enforcement Directorate on the basis of information by the Central Bureau of Investigation during the investigation. In the case of explosives found near industrialist Mukesh Ambani's residence and the subsequent death of Hiran, an accused in Mansukh Hiran murder case, Mumbai Police Constable Vinayak Shinde was dismissed from the service on Monday. Earlier, Mumbai Police Inspector Sachin Vaze and his colleague Assistant Police Inspector Riyaz Hisamuddin Qazi were dismissed from service. The Supreme Court has stayed an earlier order by the Allahabad High Court in which the court made the apprehension of death due to COVID-19 a valid ground to file a bail application. The Apex Court said that anticipatory bails should be granted by the courts after taking into consideration all the factors affecting the case. The decision came after the state government filed an appeal in the Supreme Court against the Allahabad High Court order. The Supreme Court on Tuesday issued notice and sought response from the West Bengal government and police on the post-poll violence in the state that reportedly resulted in mass exodus of lakhs of people from the state. The court will hear the matter related to the political violence in the state on 7th of June. CPM's MB Rajesh has been elected as the Speaker of the 15th Kerala Legislative Assembly. He was elected with support from 99 legislators in the 140-member assembly, defeating Congress-led opposition who fielded three-time Congress MLA PC Vishnunath. Fire broke out on Tuesday in one of the crude processing units of HPCL's Vizag refinery in Visakhapatnam. The fire brigades were rushed to the spot immediately as part of safety measures. The fire was fully extinguished and no casualty was reported. 8 people have gone missing after a boat capsized in the river Seleru in the Chitrakonda police station near the Odisha-Andhra Pradesh border. There were reportedly 11 people on the boat. One body was recovered by the authorities.
Fugitive jeweler Mehul Choksi, who is wanted by the Central Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement Directorate, has gone missing in Antigua and Barbuda. Choksi's counsel advocate Vijay Agarwal confirmed that he is missing in the island nation. 62-year-old fugitive Choksi is involved in a long-running legal battle to stop his extradition to India in connection with some 14,000 crore rupees PNB loan fraud and money laundering case. He currently holds Antiguan citizenship. European countries have moved to sanction Belarus and ban its state airline from flying to Europe as they sought to punish President Alexander Lukashenko's regime for forcing a Ryanair passenger flight to land in the country so it could arrest a leading dissident on board. International outcry has continued to grow over Sunday's incident, in which Belarus allegedly used a false bomb threat to divert the airliner to its capital Minsk in order to arrest Roman Protavich, a Belarusian blogger who played a key role in last year's mass protest against Lukashenko. United States and European countries have called the incident air piracy and state-sponsored hijacking. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken pledged on a Middle East mission on Tuesday that Washington will support to rebuild Gaza as part of efforts to bolster ceasefire between its Hamas Islamist rulers and Israel. Blinken began his regional visit to Jerusalem, where he held talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli leader threatened a very powerful response if Hamas renewed cross-border rocket strikes. In tandem with Blinken's mission, Israeli authorities said they were allowing fuel, medicine and food earmarked for Gaza's private sector to enter the territory for the first time since 11 days of cross-border hostilities started on May 10th. Blinken would be in the region through Thursday and will also travel to Egypt and Jordan. Amid rising coronavirus cases in Japan, U.S. State Department issued a travel advisory warning against travel to Japan due to COVID transmission concerns, which is preparing to host the Olympics in just a couple of months. Tokyo 2020 President Seiko Hashimoto said on Tuesday that she didn't expect a U.S. advisory against travel to Japan due to coronavirus concerns to affect the Tokyo Olympics. U.S. State Department's do not travel advisory and guidance for Japan on Monday did not mention the Olympics specifically, but warned against visiting the country for now. In its new guidance, U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and said that travelers should avoid all travel to Japan. It added that due to the current situation in the country, even fully vaccinated travelers may be at risk for getting and spreading COVID variants. European leaders gathered for a second day of talks in Brussels on Tuesday to discuss climate change and COVID response. They will debate the EU's new target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by the year 2030. They will also send a signal on what policy changes they will accept to deliver the target before the European Commission publishes a huge package of climate policies in July. The leaders will also discuss COVID-19 certificates designed to open up tourism for the summer after a deal is agreed between European lawmakers and Portuguese delegation representing the member states last week. Mali's transitional president and prime minister remained detained on Tuesday after being taken by the force to military headquarters hours after government reshuffles left out 2 members of the junta that had seized power in the coup 9 months ago. The African Union, United Nations, West African Regional Bloc known as ECOWAS and other members of the international community called for immediate release of President Ban Dao and Prime Minister Mokhtar Kwan, who were taken to the Keti military headquarters along with others late on Monday. And External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, who is on a 5-day visit to United States, had a meeting with United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Both sides discussed the COVID challenge, underlining the importance of finding urgent and effective global vaccine solutions. Moreover, the issue to ramp up vaccine supply chain to ensure greater production and fairer distribution was also discussed. The minister also highlighted India's constructive role at UNSC and conveyed priorities of its upcoming presidency in August. Jaishankar welcomed UNSG's appreciation of India's peacekeeping operations, including at Goma, DRC, recently. The 2 leaders also deliberated on regional challenges in India's neighborhood. The minister shared India's concerns about ensuring the gains of the last 2 decades in Afghanistan are adequately protected. The discussion also included recent developments in India's eastern neighborhood, Myanmar. And that brings us to the close of this edition of Newsnight. Namaskar.